So that is I had those, no, I didn't have any. I didn't, yeah, okay. But I got put one on demand.
You changed your appointment.
No.
I was supposed to take them to the doctor here in China. I got together.
I love all of those birds.
You know, meanwhile, I can't.
Yeah. I don't know how to say
But we all cared. Yeah. That's what I said. That's the first thing I said.
But it's not so much here. She's going on board.
Yeah. You look like you're.
For once. I
Thank you. Sorry,
I will ask.
You're saying all the nice things.
That's all right. So your dad's just running around.
Yeah, but meanwhile, he was fine with me.
You can come to our show and. December 2nd and 3rd. You know, right, and then and late side.
Yeah, well, last year.
Yeah.
Right, was kind of.
Yes. Yes, yeah, we're gonna be in one break. And Tina and I have your face there. Here. But it's the third.
Operator from here, or she out?
She's gonna operate it. I just want to get this pop-up gone, but I can't find her mouse. No, that's okay. I don't think she has one plugged in.
You should touch it on.
I don't know if this is a touch. Yeah, I'm trying to use the touchpad. I just can't find the mouse. It's like stuck somewhere. That's okay. Let's. Let me check with Leah.
This is your computer, right?
Yeah.
See if you can, I don't know how to use your, like, I don't know if this time you would have a better touch to get into.
I don't know what you did. It's not responding.
No, I haven't. We couldn't do it. I didn't, all I did is try and find a mouse and so try and find your thing to click.
I don't know what you did, so I don't know how to.
No, it came up. What's her name was looking at it. I was looking for a mouse. You have a mouse? Or
I
something?
don't have a mouse. It all works with the track.
But I didn't, I mean, I'm just like,
Okay.
It
You
was
want me
on.
to- I'll take care of it.
Yeah, it was on before, so I'm not sure.
What was on?
The screen was on, the first image.
Mhm. Alright. That'll bring it back. Oh, thank you.
Realized that Regina was your sister. She was at my house for dinner night.
I'm gonna kill the lights.
So now you can go full screen again. Sure.
I'm gonna kill the lights.
Sorry.
We're gonna,
No, I just don't want people to like sit in the dark.
we've got
For no reason.
6 more minutes.
Good turnout.
Yeah, very good turnout.
There was a mouse.
Well, we had to, because the enter key wouldn't work, so you would escape out. So that you get the mouse back.
Okay,
That's- So she was the one looking for it, so I was
Yeah.
looking for it.
what was that? Does it disappear when it's on the?
So you just need to clear those 2 boxes, but the mouse is inactive. Because it-
That's really exciting. My grandma has some. My grandparents are from Egypt. My family's from Egypt. I mean, if you need it, if you need any backup, let me know. Yeah. Yeah.
So pull some extra chairs. Celeste is getting extra chairs.
Okay, perfect.
I'm going to intro Patricia.
Yeah,
and then
yeah. Yeah, Kalia asked me to make an announcement to everyone that we're gonna be starting directly at 12:13 because it automatically starts streaming. So to have everyone gather like at like 12:13, if that makes sense.
I think we're gathered.
Okay, yeah, I think so too. I think we expected more folks to start milling around.
No, they're ready. They're ready.
Okay, sweet.
Look at everybody being ready.
Everyone's ready.
Everyone arriving on time. Thank you so much.
Amazing.
Wow.
I know.
It's like,
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Mhm.
Then that's great.
Tech stuff is.
Yeah, she should be. on. Yeah, the Zoom doesn't, it starts streaming directly at 12:15. So we can hang out until then. It'll automatically start live streaming then.
I need to pull up the files again.
Don't know how to turn those.
Nor do I.
Okay.
I don't think it's
they're
a
not
problem. No. I don't think it's a problem at all.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how to turn
So
those.
that's plugged in. over.
Oh, okay.
Hello. Come right on in, grab a seat.
Oh, that did it. We're good.
Thank you. All right. Sitting comfortably in the dark. Come right on in. Welcome. Hi, Jan. Okay. Right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming to today's lunchtime artist talk at the Morgan with Patricia Brett. We're so happy to welcome you here. If I have not met you before, I am Nicole Donnelly. I'm the new director here at the Morgan. It's lovely to meet you all, and thank you for coming. So we are live streaming this as well, which is kind of a fun thing that we've been trying to do, streaming it on Facebook while simultaneously having you as an audience here with us. So to introduce Patricia, she has been here for the last 4 weeks, and it has been a pleasure to see all of the work that she's been making. Patricia Brett is a multidisciplinary artist and former architect. She works in stone, paper, ink, and printmaking. Her explorations in bas-relief, particularly her embossed prints and now cast paper multiples, which you'll see today, blur the boundaries between sculpture and printmaking. Patricia has a master's of architecture from Yale, a BS in architecture from Ohio State, and has studied stone carving and printmaking at the Art Students League of New York. She is a recipient of the Sonia Albert Schimberg Prize. Oh geez, you gave me lots of foreign, the Schweinfurth Scholarship and the Charles Blaise Vukovich Scholarship. During her 20-year plus architectural career, Patricia worked for Hariri and Hariri, 1100 architect, Wathme, Siegel and Associates, and Deborah Burke and Partners. Patricia was a contributing author to Insights, Reflections from 101 of Yale's Most Successful Entrepreneurs, Prime, Reflections on Time and Beauty, and the Huffington Post. She created the original cover art for Bitter Bites from Sugar Hills and Lucioli in Palma alla Notte, both works of poetry by the Italian author Sarah Fruner. In addition to teaching workshops in silver point drawing at the Morgan, Patricia has taught embossed printmaking at Zygote Press and design principles of Notan at the Art Students League of New York. Prior to focusing on the visual arts, Patricia founded Veronica Brett, the first line of designer swimwear for breast cancer survivors. Featured in Harper's Bazaar and O, the Oprah magazine, Veronica Brett was a success with fashion editors and survivors. Patricia's work is in the permanent collections of the New York Public Library, the Art Students League of New York, Metro Health Hospitals in Cleveland, and private collections in the US and Europe. After spending 30 years in New York City, Patricia now calls Cleveland Heights home. Please help me in welcoming Patricia Brett.
Thanks, Nicole. And thanks all of you for coming and spending your lunch hour with us. As Nicole mentioned, I was an architect, and although architects build models, a lot of what they do is create two-dimensional drawings of what will become three-dimensional spaces or three-dimensional forms, built works. And artists quite often do the opposite. They look at the three-dimensional world and they create two-dimensional images, paintings or drawings, still lifes, portraits, landscapes. And I'm really interested in this idea of the representation of form, the relationship and the back and forth between two-dimensional and three-dimensional. What happens when we compress a three-dimensional object or volume? What happens when we look at a two-dimensional image and extrude an object from that? And I've explored this idea of compression in my embossed prints. This idea of, these are really hard to read. They're monochromatic, white on white, so we're just seeing a shadow. And what I've done is I'll carve a linoleum block really deep, and then I run it through a press with a lot of pressure. So you get a slightly raised image off the page, and it's the shadow that creates the image. This is another of the embossed prints. This one is probably about 18 high by 24 wide. And another of the embossed prints. Again, tough to view on a screen. And then I've also been playing with the converse, looking at two-dimensional works and extruding from them and creating bas-relief sculptures or full three-dimensional sculptures. This is a small bas-relief. Bas-relief being those sculptures that aren't fully three-dimensional, but they can be as flat as the carving on a coin, or they can project out, you know, to whatever extent, but it's not a sculpture you're really walking around. So this was made in clay and then cast in plaster. It's very tiny. And it's based on a painting by Giorgio Morandi, an Italian modernist painter. It's an oil painting. And it was one that I kind of became a little obsessed with. And I started making a lot of sculptures based on this painting. This is a larger version. Again, it was made in clay, cast in plaster, and patinaed in bronze. This was from the same painting. I carved it in alabaster. This one is really teeny tiny. And then from that same painting, I actually created a fully three-dimensional sculpture. And then with paper, I wanted to see how minimal could I go in suggesting or implying a volume. And I came up with this idea of just folding a piece of paper. And by the folding, I could imply a volume. That shadow, the light and shade, really suggesting the three-dimensionality of this, what is normally absolutely flat, the paper. Again, this is based on a Morandi painting, as is this one here. And these are about 7 inches by 7 inches. And I just got really into doing these. They're really subtle, but for me, they just kind of got, they're very subtle and nuanced, but they, I found them really beautiful, just, you know, in terms of what I could create. And then just before COVID hit, I had a tiny studio in New York, and I started playing around with this idea of sculpting with paper and air, and just using my hands and copy paper and the air to create these forms. And I wasn't quite sure what I was doing with them or where I was going with them, but I made a bunch of them. And then they slowly kind of morphed into these characters or hieroglyphics. And then from these characters, I started stringing them together and creating kind of words. And then making, this is like made of teeny tiny little characters. And then I started composing these words into sort of like haikus, is the way I thought of them. And it was this idea of, when I see old Assyrian carvings, I'm really moved by them, even though I can't possibly understand what those carvings mean. And I was trying to elicit that same emotional reaction with this sort of made up gestural language that I was playing with. So these are 2 of the haikus. And these, what I did was I made embossed prints carving linoleum plates and ran the, this is handmade paper from the Morgan that I purchased at the store here. I ran the paper through the etching press, and then I hand applied, collaged my characters on top of it. Again, just this completely made up gestural language. And this was a series of 3. And then I started using those same carved linoleum blocks and using them as molds for cast plaster. And Stanley William Hayter wrote about this in his book, The Complete Gravure. And it's a technique, he calls it printing on plaster. But what you do is you actually use that carved linoleum plate as a mold, and you ink it up, build a box around it, pour plaster in it, and then the plaster pulls the ink off the plate. And so this one, I then took my stone carving tools and started carving the edges and exposing the burlap, and really trying to play with that. This is another of the cast plaster pieces. This one is about 12 by 12 mounted on plywood. And then for my residency here at the Morgan, I wanted to continue my obsession with the bas-relief. But I also wanted to further explore that intersectionality between sculpture and printmaking through cast paper multiples. And at the same time, I wanted to experiment with sustainable, reusable mold making materials. Quite often in the making of sculpture, there's a lot of waste. There actually are even called waste molds, which the plaster molds just, go by the wayside and fill a landfill. So I wanted to come up with some way of making multiples and making forms that I could kind of reuse and create a clean slate. So I experimented with a few different ways of doing that here. But at the same time, I was making my own paper to make the paper multiples. So that was also a bit of a learning process. And this is a sheet of paper that's dripping in the mold and decal box. One of the first things I used, I have a bunch of these wax spaghetti from a foundry, a bronze casting foundry years ago. And I started taking these wax spaghetti and just laying them over the table and kind of creating what I consider drawings with them. And I had to tape them down so they wouldn't move. And then the paper that I was making, I would flip over and form the paper over top of the wax with the idea that I could just keep reusing this wax over and over. If I dipped it in a little warm water, it became pliable and I could create another piece from it. And so this is one of the works in progress. This is a larger cast paper relief over wax. This one is probably about 40 inches by 55 inches. It's a 9-panel piece. One of the other things I used as mold materials are these letterpress weights, or they're called furniture. And because they have letter presses here at the Morgan, I started using these rectangular pieces of furniture as a mold material. So I basically set up a design and started draping my handmade paper over them. The letterpress weights ended up doing two things. They became a mold, but I also used them to weigh down my paper sculpture as pieces were drying. So it did double duty for me. And then back into the spirit of Morandi, I started draping the wet paper over bottles and jugs and bowls and balls, and really just, casting found objects with the idea that now that I have these collecting in my studio, I'm going to start hopefully recreating some of those paintings in a much larger format and just using those as the starting point for some looser sculptural, really deep reliefs. And one of the other materials I used, actually it was suggested by Nicole, was kids' Sculpey clay. And I rolled the clay out and I pressed flowers into it. And I also drew into it my little gestural language characters I drew in the clay. With the idea then that once I cast the paper into it, I could take a rolling pin and roll that clay out and reuse it over and over again. One of the things I learned is that abaca shrinks a lot. And compared to cotton, the abaca really did not want to stay on the clay forms, and it just kind of blew off and distorted and did its own thing. And so this was another type of clay that I used, again, carving into the clay and using it as a mold for paper casting. One of the things they have here at the Morgan, which is super cool, and it's a method that Tom Balbo developed, they have these really large vacuum tables. And the vacuum tables will basically suck the water out of paper and allows you to create castings with paper. So in this instance, what I did is I took a bunch of small objects and I put them on a board and I draped the paper over the top, and then I let the vacuum table suck the water out. And I created paper castings using that method. So this is one of the pieces that I made using the vacuum table. Again, it's, it's a bas relief, it's a little deep. And going back to that idea of hand forming paper and air using my hands, I started creating some of those characters, those gestural language characters with my hands using the wet paper that I had just made. And so once I made those characters, then I could play around with them and arrive at what my composition might be or what my haiku might be. And I would, set them up, take a photo, rearrange them, take another photo. And then I had this wacky idea that I wanted to do a really large cast paper relief. And so with the help of Michelle Marshall, the ace paper maker here, and Ryan, and a few other sets of hands, we made some very, very large paper in what is called a decal box. So the paper that we made was 40 by 60. And it was quite an operation, and I will post a video of it on Instagram. It involved a lot of water and a lot of mess and a lot of fun. And so, yeah, there's Ryan and Michelle helping to hoist this piece of paper. As they say, it takes a village sometimes. And I learned a very, very great deal from the team here, both in terms of paper casting and paper making. And so these are just some of the images of the final pieces. I still have a couple of buckets of pulp, so that I'm going to continue casting later today and tomorrow, and maybe even in my studio. So this is a cast paper flowers, what you saw earlier when I pressed the flowers into the clay. This is what I was able to achieve with that. And then this is the cast paper, one of the language pieces. I carved my characters into the Sculpey. Another cast paper piece where I carved into the plasticine clay. And then this was the composition I came up with when I ultimately put the characters together. I mounted them on almost square sheets of paper. It's hard to achieve a perfect piece of paper. And then this was the final of the casting of the small objects in the vacuum box. And this is what I ultimately did with those sheets of paper that were draped over the letterpress furniture. And, with the idea I have all these sheets of paper like this now, I can start playing around and coming up with different designs and arrangements of those. But again, it's I think the common theme with all of this is that idea of light and shadow and that compression of volume and how the shadow allows us to experience the object. This is we saw the very early wax drawings. So this is a 9 square. This is one piece that will be mounted and framed. And one of the things about making big work is that I could only photograph it on my floor. So I could stand over top of it and look down on it. And this was one of the very, very early wax drawings that I did, cast paper over the wax. And initially, I thought it was a failure. I didn't really like it. The paper really didn't stick to the wax. But after I held on to some of these works for a while, I really started to really like them. And I realized that the paper had its own life, and there was a lot of subtlety and a lot of nuance happening when what I had, thought I was going to make was really black and white, a really hard, crisp line. And yet I really kind of fell in love with these. This one, the paper was really thin, so it wrinkled a lot. But looking back on it, I just thought there's something really beautiful about the paper doing what it needs to do. This is another with the cast paper with cotton rag. And this you can actually even see like a third of the way from the left. I had some bubbles in the paper. So the paper itself, even before I cast it, had some flaws, but those flaws actually just lent some character to the piece. And this is another of the cast pieces. One of the things that was interesting is when I would drape the paper over the wax forms, I wasn't quite sure once I lifted the dry paper, what was going to be the front and what was going to be the back. And we'll look at them over on the wall afterwards. But quite often I just had to go with what the piece was telling me. Was the impression going to be raised or was it going to be recessed? Which side really spoke to me? So some I decided that the relief was the top, and others I decided that the projection was going to be the front of the piece. And this is another in the abaca, and you can see the difference between the cotton rag really took the presence of the wax better, where the abaca, there's not as much of an impression from the wax, but there's just something really beautiful about catching those little ends of the wax forms and the subtle way that the paper formed around it. And those are the kinds of results I would never be able to make up. That's what the paper wanted to do. Again, with abaca, this is unbleached abaca. And this is also an early one in the unbleached abaca. This is a cotton piece, and we'll look at this on the wall in a minute. This is one where I decided I liked it with the raised portion facing us. This is about, I'm going to say it's about 18 by 15. And then this is the 9 square piece. This is one work, but ultimately I want to have each rectangle framed, but when they would be displayed, they would be very tight together, the frames. So we saw this early on with the wax drawing on the tabletop. And I'm really happy with how these came out. This one, I decided that it's the reveal, that's the right side, the top we would be experiencing. And then this is what we came up with from the giant piece of paper we were making, the 40 by 60. This is hanging over on the partition, and I still haven't decided which is the right side of this one yet. I'm going to live with it a little while. Do I want the reveal to the front, which is the way we hung it, or do I want the projection to be on top? And this is a picture of me after 4 really happy weeks here. And so I just wanted to thank everybody here at the Morgan for making this such an incredible experience. And again, thank all of you for coming. And one of the things I learned is that when you go and you do a residency and you focus on one thing for 4 weeks, you learn a heck of a lot, but it's really a nice concentrated way to explore a medium and to develop an idea. So that's it for, I think, our Facebook live stream. And then I'll walk you through what we've got here in the room. And then we can have some snacks and chit chat if everybody wants to do that. So